So there's a part of this Netanyahu-Dermer story that didn't make most of the headlines. And I want to explain it to you, because once you understand why this mission is happening right now at this exact moment, the whole thing flips. Before I go any further, though, drop the country you're watching from in the comments. I want to see where everyone's tuning in today. I actually do read them, so let me know. So here's what we're dealing with. Benjamin Netanyahu just dispatched his top guy, Ron Dermer, to Washington. Now, on the surface, that sounds like routine diplomacy, right? An envoy goes to the Capitol, meetings happen, everyone shakes hands, takes some photos, issues a joint statement about shared values and continued cooperation. Except that's not what this is. This is damage control. This is a firefighting mission. And the fire? That fire is between Netanyahu and the Trump administration. And it's burning a lot hotter than anyone wants to admit. Because here's the thing that most news reports are glossing over. Dermer isn't going to Washington to advance a new policy or sign a new deal. He's going to undo something that's already been done. Something that the United States already finalized. Something that Netanyahu's own government agreed to. And then, at the absolute last second, they tried to blow it up. Let me walk you through what actually happened. There's a plan for Gaza, President Trump's plan, the second phase of it. I'm not going to get into every detail of the plan itself right now. We could do a whole video on that alone. But the important thing is this. The second phase was basically ready to go. The administration had it mapped out. Negotiations were done. The framework was finalized. Netanyahu's people were at the table. They gave their input. They signed off on the general direction. And then, after all that, right before implementation, Israel submitted a list of objections. Last-minute objections. Now, you don't need to be a diplomat to understand why that's a problem. Imagine you're hosting a dinner party. You ask your guests what they want to eat. Everyone agrees on the menu. You cook the meal. And then, right as you're about to serve it, one guest says, "Actually, I don't eat that, and I need you to cook something else. And also, I'd prefer a different seating arrangement." That's basically what happened. And the Trump administration, according to multiple sources, was not happy about it. Not happy is probably putting it mildly. Officials in Washington are reportedly asking a very simple question. If Israel had concerns, why didn't they raise them during the actual negotiations? Why wait until everything was finalized? Why wait until the United States had already committed to a path and defended it publicly? That's the part that has people in Washington furious, and I get it, because it smells like a deliberate move. It smells like someone who wanted to be able to say they tried to work with the administration, but then reserved the right to throw a wrench in the works at the last minute. Now let's talk about Ron Dermer. He's not just some random Israeli official who happened to be available for a trip. He's Netanyahu's guy. He's been Netanyahu's guy for a long time. He's the one they send when things are going sideways. He was the ambassador to the United States for years, and he's been in and out of these negotiations at the highest level. So when Netanyahu sends Dermer, he's saying, I'm not messing around. I'm sending my top closer. But here's the thing about closers. They usually get sent in to make a deal happen, not to clean up a mess that they already made. This isn't a deal closing mission. This is a tension reduction mission, a let's keep this from exploding mission. And the fact that Netanyahu needs to send Dermer at all tells you how serious the rift has become. Because normally this kind of thing is handled through phone calls, through normal diplomatic channels, through lower-level working groups. But sending Dermer means they've gone past that. They're at the send the fixer stage. And that stage in diplomacy is usually the last stop before things break down completely. Let me be real with you for a second. The dispute isn't just about timing. It's about substance. There are specific points of disagreement that are the real sticking points. One of them is weapons storage. Hamas has been collecting weapons. The plan involves storing those weapons somewhere, securing them, preventing them from being used again. But Israel wants specific control over how that storage happens. They don't trust anyone else to do it. Now, on the surface, that's understandable. Hamas is a terrorist organization. They've killed Israelis. They've launched rockets. Of course, Israel wants to make sure the weapons are actually secured. But the issue is how, and more importantly, who's in charge. Another sticking point, and this one is huge: Turkey and Qatar. The finalized agreement reportedly includes monitoring roles for both countries, and Israel has objected to that. Seriously, Turkey and Qatar monitoring Gaza, monitoring Hamas. Now just sit with that for a second. Turkey and Qatar have not exactly been neutral actors in this conflict. Qatar has hosted Hamas leadership. Qatar has funneled money into Gaza. Turkey has been openly critical of Israel, sometimes in pretty harsh language. So you can understand why Netanyahu would look at that and say, I don't want these countries having oversight over anything. But the Trump administration, from what I can piece together, saw it differently. They saw these countries as useful, as players that could provide legitimacy and buy-in from the broader Muslim world, as partners that would help stabilize the region. And apparently, they thought Israel was on board with that. So when Israel suddenly said, actually, no, it wasn't just a minor disagreement. It was a fundamental challenge to the whole deal. Then there's the question of military operations. The new administration in Gaza, that's what they're calling the Phase 2 government framework, would have certain control over territory. And Israel wants to maintain the ability to operate militarily in those areas if they deem it necessary. The U.S. position, as I understand it, is that the new administration needs to have actual authority, actual control. That the point of the plan is to transition away from Israeli military operations and toward a more stable, civilian-led governance structure. So you see the problem, right? Israel wants to maintain the option of military action. The U.S. wants a clean break. And those two things are fundamentally incompatible. Netanyahu wants it both ways. He wants the benefits of the U.S. plan. He wants American support, American funding, American political cover. But he doesn't want to give up the ability to do whatever he wants militarily. And the Trump administration is pushing back on that. So here's Dermer. He's in Washington, meeting with officials, trying to explain Israel's position. And I don't envy him, because the explanation he's supposed to give is essentially, we agreed to something, but we actually want something different, and we're hoping you'll just change everything at the last minute to accommodate us. That's a tough sell. And the U.S. administration, from what I'm hearing, is not in a particularly generous mood. I mean, think about it from their perspective. They've been working on this for months. They've been negotiating with Israel's representatives. They've been making concessions, building relationships, trying to get everyone in the same room. And now, at the 11th hour, Israel is trying to rewrite the deal. That's the kind of thing that destroys trust. And trust in international relations is everything. If the U.S. can't trust Israel to negotiate in good faith, if they think Netanyahu is going to agree to something just to buy time and then renege on it, then the whole relationship starts to break down. And that's what makes this moment so dangerous. Because we're not just talking about Gaza. We're not just talking about a plan. We're talking about the entire U.S.-Israel relationship, the alliance that has been the bedrock of Middle East policy for decades. And it's being tested right now over this. I want to be careful here because I'm not trying to take sides. I'm just telling you what I see. And what I see is two parties who are on a collision course. Netanyahu is under incredible pressure at home. The Israeli public is divided. The war with Hamas has been brutal. The hostages are still not all back. The domestic political situation is a mess. So he's looking for wins. He's looking for ways to show the Israeli people that he's protecting their security. And he's seeing the U.S. plan as a potential threat to that security. But here's the irony. The U.S. plan is designed to reduce threats, to create stability, to move Gaza toward a future where Hamas no longer has control. And Netanyahu is putting that at risk because of specific implementation details, weapons storage, monitoring roles, military operations. These are important. They matter. But are they worth blowing up the entire deal? I don't know. And honestly, I don't think Netanyahu knows either. Because if he knew, he wouldn't be sending Dermer. He'd be making a decision one way or the other. Instead, he's trying to buy time. He's trying to see how much he can get. He's trying to test the administration's limits. And that's a dangerous game to play. Because the Trump administration, and I say this with respect, not as a criticism. They don't like having their limits tested. They don't like being pushed around. They don't like last-minute surprises. And they're not exactly known for being forgiving. Now, there's another layer to this. I mentioned this earlier, and I want to come back to it. The U.S. has allies in the region who are watching all of this. Countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt. Countries that have been trying to figure out where they stand on the Gaza situation, trying to manage their relationships with both Israel and the U.S. And when they see Israel and the U.S. squabbling over a plan that was already finalized, they start to ask questions. Questions like, can the U.S. really deliver on anything? Can Netanyahu be trusted to follow through? What happens if the next phase of the plan goes south? These are legitimate questions. And if the U.S.-Israel relationship starts to look frayed, these countries might start hedging. They might start making their own calculations. They might decide that the risks of working with this coalition are too high. And that would be a strategic disaster, not just for Israel, not just for the U.S., but for the entire region. Because right now, there's a window to try to stabilize Gaza, to contain Hamas, to build some kind of post-conflict order. And it's closing fast. Let me take a step back and think about the human element here. Ron Dermer is in Washington right now, probably exhausted, probably stressed, probably wondering what the hell he got himself into. I mean, imagine that phone call from Netanyahu. Ron, I need you to go to Washington and fix this. What's the problem? Let's just say some things came up. What kind of things? Weapons storage, Turkey, Qatar, military operations, the usual stuff. And the U.S. position? They're not thrilled. Not thrilled? They're furious, Ron. They're very, very furious. That's the conversation I imagine happened. Dermer is walking into an absolute buzzsaw. He's going to have to look U.S. officials in the eye and say, we know we already agreed to this, but can you please undo it and do something else? And they're going to look back at him and say, why? And the only answer he's got is because the prime minister changed his mind. That is not a winning argument. Now let me talk about something that's going to get me some heat, but I'm going to say it anyway. The way Netanyahu handled this is a problem. It's a governance problem. It's a negotiation problem. It's a leadership problem. And the reason I bring that up is because I genuinely believe it matters. Because when you're dealing with a major power like the United States, you can't operate this way. You can't agree to something, wait for the other side to commit, and then try to pull the rug out from under them. That's not how allies behave. That's how adversaries behave. And the United States is starting to treat Israel like an adversary. Not publicly, not officially, but in the private meetings, in the strategy sessions, in the quiet conversations that happen behind closed doors, there's a shift happening. The goodwill that used to exist it's eroding. And this kind of thing, the last-minute objections, the Dermer mission to clean up the mess, it's accelerating that erosion. Here's what I think is really going on. I think Netanyahu looked at the plan and thought, I'll agree to this for now. I'll let the U.S. take the lead. And then, when it's too late for them to change course, I'll demand the changes I really want. It's a classic negotiation tactic. Wait until the other side is committed, until they've invested too much to walk away, and then apply pressure. But it's also a very, very dangerous tactic because it assumes the other side won't walk away. But what if they do? What if the U.S. says, fine, you want to change the deal? We'll scrap the whole thing. We'll go a different direction. We'll work with other partners. What happens to Israel then? That's the calculation Netanyahu is making. He's betting that the U.S. needs Israel more than Israel needs the U.S. And that's a bet that has been made before, many times, by many Israeli leaders. And sometimes it pays off, but sometimes it really doesn't. Let me pull back and look at the bigger picture for a minute. We are in a moment where the Middle East is being reshaped, a moment where the old alliances are being tested, a moment where the U.S. is trying to extricate itself from endless conflict while maintaining influence. And Israel is trying to navigate that moment without losing its strategic position. Those two goals are not automatically aligned. And the fact that Netanyahu is sending Dermer to Washington suggests that the misalignment is worse than anyone is letting on. Because if this was a routine diplomatic dispute, you wouldn't send Dermer. You'd send a lower-level official. Or you'd have a phone call. Or you'd wait for the next scheduled meeting and sort it out then. But sending Dermer at this moment, that's a signal. And the signal is, we have a problem, a big problem, and it needs to be fixed now. The other signal is that Netanyahu doesn't trust anyone else to handle it, which means he's worried that U.S. officials are going to say things that he doesn't want to hear, that they're going to push back in ways that his normal diplomats can't handle. So he sends Dermer because Dermer is loyal. Dermer is tough. Dermer will fight for Netanyahu's position even if it's not entirely defensible. And you know what? I think that's probably the right call. If you're going to send someone into a hostile meeting, send someone who's not afraid of conflict. But it also tells you how bad things have gotten. Because when you need to send a fighter, not a diplomat, you're already past the point of normal negotiation. Now let me talk about the media coverage of this. Because honestly, most outlets are treating this like routine business. Netanyahu sends envoy to Washington. Diplomatic mission aims to resolve differences. Continued cooperation expected. That's the script. And I think it's the wrong script. Because this isn't routine. This isn't a normal diplomatic mission. This is a crisis. And I'm frustrated that the media isn't saying that louder. Because if people don't understand how serious this is, they're going to be shocked when the next shoe drops. And there's always a next shoe. There's always a next shoe. So let me end on this. Dermer is in Washington. He's going to have the meetings. He's going to present Israel's position. He's going to try to convince the Trump administration to change the agreement. And maybe he'll succeed. Maybe the administration will say, fine, we'll make some adjustments. We'll accommodate some of your concerns. We'll keep the deal alive. But even if that happens, the damage has been done. Because the U.S. will remember this. The officials will remember the last-minute objections, the withholding of concerns, the Dermer mission to fix something that shouldn't have been broken. And that memory will affect future negotiations. It will affect how much trust they extend. It will affect how much patience they have. It will affect whether they're willing to go out on a limb for Israel again. So the question I'm left with isn't whether Dermer will succeed. It's whether the relationship can survive this. And honestly, I'm not sure it can. Not in the same way. Not with the same level of trust and goodwill that used to exist. Because when you pull a move like this, you don't just win or lose on the specific issue. You change the entire dynamic. And the new dynamic is one of suspicion, one of caution, one of what are they going to do next? And that's not a healthy relationship. That's a relationship that's in trouble. But here's the thing about trouble. It doesn't go away on its own. You have to address it. You have to work through it. You have to rebuild trust. And rebuilding trust takes time, it takes humility, it takes honesty. I'm not sure those are qualities that are abundant in this moment on either side. So that's where we are. Dermer is in Washington. The meetings are happening. The conversations are taking place. And while they're happening, the world is watching. The region is watching. The future of Gaza is hanging in the balance. I don't know how this ends. I don't know if Dermer can pull it off. I don't know if Netanyahu's strategy is going to work or blow up in his face. But I do know that what happened in the last few days, the last-minute objections, the decision to send Dermer, the tension that's now visible between two longtime allies, that's not nothing. That's the kind of thing that shapes history. And whether we like it or not, we're living through it. One last thing. This isn't over. You have to understand that. Even if Dermer comes back with a win, even if the deal goes forward, even if everyone shakes hands and smiles for the cameras, the core tensions that cause this are still there. The different visions for Gaza, the different expectations about military operations, the different assumptions about trust and reliability. All of that is still there. And it's going to keep coming up again and again until someone decides to actually deal with it. Maybe that someone is Netanyahu. Maybe it's the Trump administration. Maybe it's the next generation of leaders on both sides. But right now, we're in the middle of it. And the middle is always the hardest place to be. So thanks for listening, really. I appreciate you taking the time. If you want to stay with me for more of this stuff, hit subscribe. That way you don't miss the next one. Because trust me, there's going to be a next one. There always is. And if you're watching from somewhere outside the U.S., or if you're in the U.S., I'm just curious, where are you? What's your country? Put it in the comments. I'm genuinely interested because it's fascinating to me that people from all over are following this. All right. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.